Kanagi, we appreciate you taking the time.
Wrong button there. All right. All right. Good evening, guys. It's a special 330 sports show. We're going live tonight. Greg Kirchner, Justin Coffin. We are live right after the Cleveland Guardians just took down the Detroit Tigers to finally get back to the AL Central lead after a long, huge deficit earlier in the season, 15 and a half games. We're going to talk all about that. We're going to lead off. We're only going to spend probably like 5 minutes or so on the Cleveland Guardians to lead off the show. We will get into our normal NFL stuff. We're going to talk about the Browns' big win over the Green Bay Packers. We're going to talk about this crazy week 3 of the NFL, really crazy week 3 of the NFL. We're going to talk Ohio State was on a bye, but they have a big game coming up this weekend. We're going to talk about that with the Washington Huskies. So we have a loaded show. We're going to, do our normal stuff, go through our normal, bits and stuff like that. But Greg, you're wearing the Guardians, well, Cleveland stuff. I'm wearing the Cleveland stuff. Let's start off with that huge win for the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, boy, what an unbelievable game. And I think it kind of epitomized what the last month or two has been for both the Guardians and the Tigers. Just the sixth inning, going against Tarek Skubal, down 2-0, and we were chatting off the air. I mean, probably one of the strangest innings that I've ever seen in my life. And just, not the fact that no ball probably went more than 60 feet in that entire inning, and we scored 3 runs. But on top of that, the crazy error by Skubal on the little doing his Maurice Pouncey imitation, going between the legs over the first baseman's head. You had a wild pitch that scored a run. You had a balk to get a runner over to third. You had the unfortunate David Fry injury. I sure hope he's okay. I'm sure that has to make you cringe as much as anybody, having had facial injuries before. Yeah. Like, that was scary stuff. It was good to see him get up and walk to the cart, but 99-mile-per-hour pitch that kind of grazed off a bat. You got to think there's some damage there somewhere. But just an incredible inning, like a kind of a once in a lifetime inning, and then just the pitching altogether. 19 strikeouts today as a pitching staff. Truly unbelievable. And there's more work to be done. There's 5 games to go, but to be at this moment as we sit here, having clinched the tie break over Detroit with that win, we're sitting in first place in the AL Central in the playoffs, which is in a season that, frankly, we've all probably given up on, right? Between 3 and 7 times.
Exactly.
With everything that happened, this is surreal. This is surreal. I mean, we had a 22-game winning streak back in, 2018. This is whatever. Yeah, this is a better 16 out of 18 in this situation to get us to where we're at now, I think is a better run and a more magical run than the 22-game winning streak. But baseball is a weird-ass game. Tomorrow's a new day, so we really got to keep the pedal to the metal.
Yeah, this team is literally like, it's been, like you said, it's been given up on so many times, been left for dead. I myself expected this team to go like 80 and 82 this year. Mm-hmm. I was thinking like, maybe 500. And then, once they started turning it around a little bit, I'm like, well, it's great. We're getting these young pitchers, great, meaningful baseball here into September. And now it's like, well, hell, let's go win the division now and let's get into the playoffs and mess around and see what happens. So this is just like all icing on the cake. But like you said, there is still more work to be done. Again, I'll put this graphic up, but this is unbelievable. No team. So sorry, Tiger fan. I wouldn't imagine there's too many Detroit Tiger fans that watch this show along with our Buckeye fans. But no team has ever lost its division since 1969 or pre-1969 after leading by 14 or more games. The Detroit Tigers were up by 15 and a half games way back on, I believe I've seen July 8th and I've seen July 7th. I'm just going with July 7th. The Guardians were also on a 10-game losing streak at that time. And then tonight, the culmination of building it back up. You've beat the reigning Cy Young winner in back-to-back starts. And, he's probably going to win it again this year. But, just what this team does. They don't hit the ball well. They don't hit for power. There's a bunch of young guys. There's probably a bunch of, guys on the roster that when we get to the playoffs and we're playing Boston or New York or Toronto or whoever it might be, they're going to be like, who the hell are these guys? Outside of Jose Ramirez and a few, other key members that have made runs before. But like, this team is not superstar loaded, but it finds a way to get the job done. And like, literally, I have not heard he was the manager of the year last year, but how to not give it to Stephen Vogt again? Like,
seriously,
the job he's done. Not to mention, your best pitcher is suspended from baseball. Your third starter is suspended from baseball. It's just unbelievable. Some of your key players, David Fry, again, we hope he's okay, but he's missed a ton of baseball this year. It's just awesome to see what this team can do and what it's capable of when it's going. And it's just like, it's contagious. And I love to see that. So
it's the ultimate, like, never say die, like, different guy kind of. I mean, you have your Jose and you have your Quan. Those are kind of your consistent performers. But then you have your just different guy every night steps up. Daniel Schneemann with a massive, 2 out, 2 RBI single to pad the lead and make it a little bit easier, because these one-run games can get crazy, especially with the heart of the Tigers order, where any other guys can tie the game up with one swing. But I mean, you said it, 3 guys that were massive contributors last season in the playoffs and during the season: Lane Thomas, David Fry, John Kenzie Noel. They've all basically, for injuries or ineffectiveness, been non-entities this year. And yet, when we talked about the suspensions and with all that, here we are, and it's amazing. And it's always a paradox when we talk Browns, we talk Buckeyes, because it's like, it's all about expectation. We love our Buckeyes, but the expectation is, hey, we got to go out and win every game, win a national championship. The greatest things in sports, and we're going to talk about this Browns win, but this Guardians run is like the unexpected, because it really feels like house money. It's like this season was written off so many times, and now here we are, and it's just fun now. And it's you can, today got a little nerve wracking, and these games get nerve wracking because you want to finish it off. But at the end of the day, it's a ton of fun, and we have put ourselves in a great position. Obviously, the Tigers are just, baseball is a weird game. Like, baseball, the ebbs and flows of a baseball season, and how it feels when you're hot and like everything goes right, and the balls, the bloopers drop, the other team hits the ball hard, it's right to your guy, and it's the complete opposite when you're not playing well. And the Tigers have just been in a stretch right now where they just can't buy a victory. And I think the last thing we want to do in these next 2 games is give them a chance to give them life. I think this is your opportunity. Yeah, you win these 2 games, you effectively win the division. You win these 2 games, your magic number's 1 going into the weekend. You win 1 out of 2, you go into the weekend tied with the tiebreaker. They're going to Fenway for 3. We got the Rangers, who, were in the race, aren't in the race anymore. Probably aren't going to be overly motivated. Corey Seager and Marcus Semien are both down. I like our chances going into the weekend if we can take 2 out of 3 in the series and be tied. But why not just stomp on their throats when we can win these last 2 and effectively put it away and even potentially be talking about setting a playoff rotation, which is insane to think about. If we were talking about 2 weeks ago, going into the last weekend of the season, setting up your playoff rotation, but unbelievable. It's just a fun team to watch. It epitomizes the city. The fans showed out today. They'll continue to show out the rest of the series. And, there's nothing like playoff baseball. So if we can get there, anything can happen. So this is fucking awesome.
Hell yes. Let's go. So while you were talking, I opened up a little pack of little animal crackers here, and I found myself a tiger right off the bat. So let's go. So here's what's going to be on the rest of the show today. So we will get into the Browns Green Bay game here next. We're going to talk Ohio State. YSU had a big win. They are now up to the 19th ranked team in FCS. We obviously talked Guardians to start. We're going to talk plenty more about them, probably, hopefully next week when we're getting into playoff baseball. Cavs, we're getting close. We're signing some veterans. We're pumping up the bench. And we got a few other things from the sports world and non-sports world that I'm going to throw out Greg here too in a little bit. So let's start. Let's get into the Cleveland Browns. So, normally I throw this graphic up every week. Hey, it's a bad Saturday in Ohio. No, we were off. We're still the number 1 team in the country. And holy shit, on Sunday, we won. Like, what the hell was that? That was amazing. So let's go right into the Cleveland Browns and the NFL. And, just a couple quick game notes here. Obviously a 13-10 final, but Andre Schmidt walks off a 55-yarder, which the Browns tweeted out or posted out, was the longest in franchise history as a walk-off. I was like, wait a minute, didn't Cade York hit one against Carolina in the opener a few years ago? But there was a few seconds left on the clock. So, semantics on that one, but still a win. Shelby Harris was the one that got his big paw up there and knocked that down. Grant Delpit, you don't win that game without that interception. And the Browns scored. They basically went 56 and a half minutes without scoring. They scored all 13 points in the final 3:38. And thanks to Jordan Love and cram it up your cram hole, LaFleur, throwing that ball on third down. We don't win that game, I think, if they run the ball there. So that snapped an 8-game losing streak for the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski. So, Greg, again, you said games like that are kind of some of the most fun because they're unexpected when you're talking baseball seasons like that. But like when you're talking football, this Browns team is much maligned by us, by a lot of people. And, just your thoughts on that. That's a huge win. A lot of people have Green Bay going to Super Bowl. So your thoughts?
Yeah, it was just a feel good win. It came completely out of nowhere. Like you said, all in the last 3 minutes. We're prepping to basically talk about it, another dominant performance by the defense, all for naught because of a lack of the ability to play offense. And obviously there's still major issues with the offense, but to be able to win and yeah, the Love interception was a sort of a inexplicable play, but you got to feel good for Andre Schmidt too. It's like just as a human being, we talked about it in week 1. Was it completely his fault that we lost the game? No, but did he feel like it? Yeah. I think did a lot of the fan base put that on him, of course. So to be able to bounce back, we stuck with them, figured they'd give him one more shot, and just a great kind of redemption story to, again, just as a human, you're happy to see. But
real quick, if I can interject there too, I read a story it was one of the writers. It was, so I don't know if it was Mary Kay or Dan Lobby or Ashley Bastock, but one of those three from Cleveland.com wrote a story on how Andre Schmidt's mother actually passed away from, she had like a brain aneurysm and, just like something obviously unexpected and awful. And so he's dealing with that on the side of, so making this kick was probably very minimal pressure, when it comes down to, but anyway, I just thought I would go with that.
Yeah. No, it's great for him, and that's obviously horrible what he's going through. But this is, I mean, it's crazy because this is without a doubt one of the top 5 best defenses in the league, if not higher than that. And it's an elite defense, and yeah, Packers I think still have the best odds in the NFC to make the Super Bowl. That may have changed after last night. Going into last night they did. I would imagine maybe the Lions have jumped them now, but yeah, an elite team. They certainly are going to feel like they gave the game away, which I think they kind of did. But we, for once, took that opportunity, and we were on the other side of a game that we had no business winning that we win. I mean, how many games over the years have we had no business losing and we've lost? So, offense still has issues, but at the end of the day, we got to win. We got to win on the books. And all we talked about after that Bengals game was we're going to be 0-4 almost certainly. And, now we're sitting here 1-2. So that feels pretty damn good. I think we know that we're probably not going to be a playoff football team, but this is a great win to celebrate and to give a little bit of life in the locker room too. So they don't, so we don't, get completely let down as the losses pile up.
Yeah. You have a team that works that hard. These guys aren't worried about next year's draft picks. There's probably part of them in the back of their head, but they're playing to win every single game. They put their bodies, their life on the line every time they go out there, and it's great for them, like you said, to get a W. So I thought a fun little segment we could throw in every now and then would be this win is brought to you by, and pick a company. And so if you have any, feel free to add one in. But I'm going to go with Cracker Barrel because there's a lot of talk about the old logo versus the new logo. So, just stick with the kicker. Enjoy it. We don't really need a new one. So the Sunday's performance brought to you by Cracker Barrel. Why complain about just a good old original? Stick with what got you there. So even though Andre Schmidt didn't really get us there before, but I think that kid could really be a good kicker for us going forward. An unfortunate start to his career, but hopefully good things ahead for him. And obviously now the longest game-winning walk-off in Browns history. So let's move to some of our offensive and defensive players of the game. So here's just a few of the guys' numbers. Nothing is going to blow you away here on these on these statistics, but just give me some takeaways on who from both sides of the ball you thought kind of impressed this week 3.
Quinshon Judkins looks like it's interesting because going into the season, and I'm one of these. I admit, even on draft day, I was like, man, I like Travion Henderson a lot better. And again, our very small sample size at this point, but going into the season, Judkins is unsigned. He has the off the field issues. Henderson is this fantasy sleeper, and and 3 weeks into the season, Henderson's I think snap counts have been going down. Although I think they're going to go up now that Ramondre Stevenson keeps fumbling, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is Judkins looks like he is a legit, very solid NFL running back. And that we may have gotten the better one of the Buckeye running backs, and we may have gotten one of the best rookie offensive players in the draft. So that is a huge, especially in like an offense that's really not scaring you too much, like throwing the ball down the field. So
right,
he's able to get those tough yards, and he's got a burst, and he finds the hole, and everything that we saw him do at Ohio State and Ole Miss, he's bringing to the NFL, and he looks like he belongs. So that jumps out to me on offense. And aside from just like, the usual suspects on defense, kind of I'll go to another rookie. Mason Graham has been quietly fantastic. Again, when you're a defensive tackle, you're not gonna wow on the stat sheet, and you're probably not gonna wow making plays in the game. But his ability to eat up blocks and win his matchups, which I guess his win rate is, I guess pass rush win rate was I think really high. I saw something that
over 40%.
Yeah. He's kind of an unsung guy on that D line, which allows Garrett and the pass rushers to get the stuff their stats. But he's been awesome. So I think at this point, and Schlesinger has been great too. So it's like he had that great sack on Jordan Love where he just like bull rushed him down like along the sideline. I think we nailed a lot of draft picks this year, so that bodes well for these next few years.
Absolutely. Yeah, this rookie class looks fantastic. I feel like we've talked about them every single week. They are really getting out there, and who knows, maybe we see Dylan Gabriel before we know it too. I guess I want to talk positive here. We don't get to talk positive about the Browns too often in some of these down years. So I'm thinking we're going to see Dylan Gabriel sooner than later. Probably, I would think, a home game after the London trip would be my guess. Maybe that Dolphins game we had, kind of circled, but if I don't know, I'm still torn. I always want to see the Browns win. We know you're not going to be a playoff team this year, but again, the AFC isn't that great. I don't know. I don't want to get over my skis here. I picked this team to go 5-12. And so we'll see. It's week to week. You're playing the Lions this week, who look like a juggernaut against the Ravens last night. So, but again, very impressive rookie draft class so far. So you get Mason Graham and Judkins, for the Travis Henry pick, and Travis Henry, excuse me, help me out. Jacksonville.
Travis Hunter.
Thank you. Sorry. You get those two for the Travis Hunter pick, plus next year's first round pick from Jacksonville, which, they're 2-1 right now, but hopefully we can start getting some losses piled up for them on the board. But
let me ask you this. I totally agree. Why not bring Gabriel in and maybe plan it ahead going into this week? Why not have Gabriel play a couple series or something, or have him play? I'm not a big rotate quarterbacks kind of guy, but I feel frankly, it can't get much worse than it's been. Nothing against Flacco. It's just, it's not been
like
there.
A 40-year-old quarterback.
And I know, and rightly so, they're the Lions, the Packers defense, juggernaut, and still a juggernaut, one of the best in the league. The Lions defense, sacked Lamar Jackson, 7 or 8 times yesterday. They gave up a lot of points. They're an aggressive defense. That's going to be a tough environment. It's going to be a tough game. The Vikings get after the quarterback. I know they're picking and choosing, when do we start the rookie? You want to put him in a situation to succeed. But, if things aren't going well, or even just to plan it ahead and say, hey, third series of the game, Dylan, we're going to give you a run here. And, and at least sort of have him dip his toes in the water that way. If he's successful, keep him in. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny you use the dip your toe analogy, because I think there's two separate ways of thinking this. You can dip your toe into the water, or you can just dive into the deep end and learn to swim. You can figure it out either way. Either way, it's even a bad NFL defense is still a good defense, and probably just as good as anything he saw at Oregon. Talent comparison. So I think at some point, you have to play him, whether you just mix in a series or you give him maybe, hopefully you're in a lot of these games where it's competitive and, he can play some meaningful snaps, not just garbage time. But I like that idea. I like the idea of just mixing them in here and there. And what does it hurt? What does it hurt? The expectations are very low. If you've ever heard Dylan Gabriel give a speech, he is a very well spoken, very smart, very football IQ heavy guy. I know he gets a lot of jokes made at him because he's 5'11" or 6, not quite 6 foot. But he's a stout guy though too. He's not like Tua, where he's like real skinny or anything like that. He's got some meat on his bones too. So he'll be able to handle some of those hits. And it's not like he didn't play. I'm not comparing a college defense to an NFL defense, but it's not like he played at UCF his whole career. He played at Oklahoma and he played at Oregon the last 2 years, where he led both teams to really good records and played against some severely good competition. So I'd like to see Dylan Gabriel out there. I don't know if we will, but I'd like to see him. And then, we'll see what happens with Shedeur. Hopefully he's getting better and better. I know there's a whole bandwagon of Shedeur fans out there, and I'm kind of one of them. But I think if you're asking me which two is going to be ready, Dylan Gabriel is the clear answer. One, the Browns drafted him higher, but two, he's played more in a pro style offense. I think Shedeur Sanders in his entire life, somebody can fact check me on this, but it was something like under 10 total snaps he's ever been under center. So that, you're not going to be NFL ready in that case. So anyways, we'll see what happens with that. But I'm going to say Dylan Gabriel gets his first start after the bye week. Let's just set the over under for the bye week. I'm going to say after the bye week. So I believe that's
which ones. Okay, so that's after. That would be at the Jets then.
Okay, so that I'm just going to say it's after the bye week. I'm not going to say which week, but I'm going to say after the bye week.
I like that home game against the Dolphins, actually, that you brought up. I think that feels like a good spot, but yeah, we'll see how they mix them in, or if they mix them in, or if they just kick him out of the nest and make him flap his wings.
It also has been fun. Like, I know Flacco has not been very good, but I'll tell you what, it is nice to have a guy that's just like a true pro in there, and you can hear how he answers the question. He's like, we're not getting it going. We got to do something. That's on me. That's on the coaches. That's on the players. We have to execute. So it's good to hear that and not like pointing fingers and blaming and doing stuff like that. So all good responses. So we'll see what the Browns do. But 1-2, we didn't think they'd win a game until that Miami game. So they've already exceeded our expectations.
Absolutely.
So here's a few stats that I just thought were interesting from this past week's game. We talked about the walk-off field goal, longest snaps to 8-game winning streak. But counterpoint, a negative, the Browns still have not scored more than 17 points in a game since before Thanksgiving. So we're going back quite a while there. I believe that was that Denver Broncos game. That might have been right after Thanksgiving, actually. I might have to reword that, but either way, it's been a long time for the Browns. So I don't know. Like, overall, it's a great win, and might have cost me a money line parlay here and there, but like we always say, like, hedge your happiness, right? So we're going to take a look back at last week's games real quick, what was happening in the NFL, and a look ahead to our picks for this week. So let's go into last week. First of all, it was kind of a rough early slate there for us. I went 10-6, but it was not a pretty 10-6. I got lucky in a few of those, and Greg went 8-8. So we're both over 500 for the year, but we could be much, much better. The couple things that stood out to me outside of the Browns game, the Falcons just got annihilated by what a lot of people thought was the worst team in the league in the Carolina Panthers. The Houston Texans being 0-3. That's a huge surprise. They don't look like they can block anybody. And obviously the coolest thing was that 1 o'clock window. The Eagles block kick, return for a touchdown. The Browns block kick, and then game-winning field goal. The Jets came all the way back and and then Baker goes down and Tampa hits a game-winning field goal. But that was a great ending to that game. So those are just some of my thoughts from that. And obviously the Lions beating up the Ravens last night was pretty impressive. Yeah. But your thoughts from this interesting week 3 of the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, we talked up the Falcons last week of just being like a team that looked like they were poised to make a run, and they just completely lay an egg. The Bengals looked terrible in their first game without Burrow. Whether that was just they had a ton of turnovers, so maybe it was just one of those bad games. But it's like we're still 3 weeks in, and the NFL is with the weekly drama and the way the narratives change weekly in the NFL is like nothing else. Teams that it was like, are the Colts good? Again, I mean, they are playing the Titans, so it's kind of take that how you will. But they're 3-0. They've punted once, I think, in 3 games.
Jeez.
NFL record. Are they for real? Is that division now between the Colts and the Jags? Because it sure seems like the Texans are struggling to find it. They're 0-3 and in deep trouble. But could the Colts be this year's Saints? Because remember how good the Saints were last year. The first
did the Browns win the Deshaun Watson trade? Sitting here 1-2 versus 0-3. No, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So no. So it's like teams like the Colts now are 3-0 in a great spot. As I scan this,
what do you think about the Chargers? Like that?
I think the Chargers are legitimately for real. And as we watch the Broncos kind of struggle right now, be 1-2, they're not playing their best ball. The Chiefs are 1-2. They play Baltimore. That is, I know we're not looking ahead yet, but now you have Chiefs, Ravens. One of those teams is going to be 1-3. Chiefs have not looked good. They looked pretty good in the second half of that game, but they're also playing the Giants. They just don't look like they have it. So it feels like right now the Chargers, like if you were to say, yeah, I mean, it feels like the Chargers are, I don't want to say a safe bet, but they feel pretty good to win the AFC West. Yeah. And I guess you got to say right now, it is like Colts or Jags in the South. So teams that were kind of off a lot of people's radar, are off to a hot start. But again, things change, injuries happen. And there's going to be a team like the Falcons coming up this week, right? Where it's like, oh, they finally got it figured out, or this team's really good. And then they just fall flat on their face. So it really is just ebbing and flowing week to week. But when you're trying to make picks and it's just like,
oh yeah,
it's either, sometimes you get in rhythm and you sort of figure out sort of the cadence of what these teams are going to do. And I can tell you right now, obviously going 8-8 straight up, I am not feeling the rhythm of what's going on right now with the teams.
Yeah, a lot of season left. But it's these early games you're right. It's hard to get a pulse on each team right now. Yeah. I mean, we had a few big upsets this past week and continuing on the rest of the season. I'm sure there's going to be a few more here and there. So it's been fun to watch, though, at the very least. This cannot be true now that the Eagles won this game, but I found this stat and I really wanted to use it, but I thought it was such a good stat. I don't want to waste it. But this is really interesting. So no NFL team, there are 5 bird mascots in the NFL, the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Eagles, the Falcons, and the Ravens. No team has ever beat all 5 of those teams in the same season. The 49ers went 4-1 in 2023. The Rams would have had to actually win 7 games this year. They play all of those teams, but 2 are in their own division. So they would have had to win 7 games this year. But that field goal block, first game immediately out of the competition. So I just thought that was a really interesting stat. By the way, I don't know if you've ever heard this too. The Philadelphia Eagle mascot, It's the only logo in the NFL that faces left. All the other ones face right. So
you learn something new every day. Wow.
Little nugget there. I thought I'd throw out, but I don't know how big this graphic will show up. But like, here are the 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, and 0-3 teams. So out of those, what is, like, whether it's 0-3, 3-0, or somewhere in between, what is the most surprising maybe storyline so far in the NFL this year?
I think it's the Colts 3-0, and the Texans 0-3, because I would have said that it would be flip flop. So kind of what we touched on there. But you could also say, like we also talked about, the Chiefs and the Ravens both being 1-2 going into that matchup. I don't know. What are you seeing on here?
Like, really, outside of Houston, those 0-3 teams, I pretty much think that both New York teams are going to be bad this year. There is some talent on that Giants team. I think Jackson Dart's going to take over now. You got another rookie quarterback in Cam Ward there. New Orleans, I think they're going to be in the running for probably the number 1 pick next year, and looking to get Nussmeier home with his dad there at LSU, just stay home in New Orleans. But outside of that, Baker and the Bucks, I think a lot of people probably pick them to win the NFC South, but like, they've been in a bunch of tight games, and they just find a way. They find a way to get it done. And like you said, I think the biggest storyline for me after week 4 is the Chiefs or the Baltimore Ravens. One of them will be 1-3. I think that will definitely be the biggest headline going forward. I think Cincy being 2-1, they could easily be 0-3 right now. And they are definitely not, a playoff team by any stretch of the imagination, with that terrible defense. Jake Browning looks like he got brought back to earth. The Arizona Cardinals have been kind of a nice, surprise. They could have easily won that game in San Francisco. So that's been interesting, even though apparently Marvin Harrison does not look good right now. So
he dropped that one, basically a wide open, what probably would have been a 75-yard touchdown. Yeah.
So I don't know if if it's just a mental thing with him or what's going on, but probably on the Chiefs Ravens thing, the Falcons too. The Falcons, they blew that game earlier in the season, and then they just got absolutely annihilated by, like I said, by Carolina, who a lot of people think might be the worst team in the league this year. So those are a couple of mine, but we'll see. I mean, again, the season is still very, very early, but it can get late real fast if you don't start racking up the wins early on in October. All right, so let's go to this week. Let's put our picks up for this week, and so these are our week 4 picks on the season. I'm 31-17. Greg 26-22. So it's all right. I mean, it's
early. It's early.
Or very early. So Thursday night, we both we only differ on 3 games this week. So it's there's only a few to talk about, really, in the sense of different matches. But Arizona, we're both on that. I always, if I'm unsure, I always take the home team on Thursday night. I just think that's a huge advantage. Minnesota and Pittsburgh is actually, I believe, in Ireland.
In Dublin, yep.
So that should be an interesting game. So we're going to get an early morning game already coming up. Minnesota will be out there for not just the game against Pittsburgh, but they're going to stay out there and then go to London and then play the Browns the following week out in London. One of the games we differ on, I'm on Washington. Greg's hoping the Falcons bounce back in that game. Another game that was been maybe like a mini rivalry is the Eagles and the Buccaneers. I'm on the Eagles, Greg's on the Bucks. And then the only other game we differ on, I am taking the 49ers, and Greg is on the Jacksonville Jaguars in San Francisco. So tell me why you went Atlanta, Tampa, and Jacksonville.
Yeah, so Jacksonville, I know obviously that doesn't that's not a good result for the Browns, but I think going into the season, I think I picked the 49ers to win the NFC West, but 3 games in and they're 3-0. I just popped open their schedule and they have a kind of a ridiculously easy schedule. God,
Yes.
they got lucky. They got the NFC South and AFC South as their divisions, but I think with the injuries that they've had, that they're kind of a fraudulent 3-0 at this point. Again, talented organization, very well coached. But they could very easily, they struggled even against the Saints. I mean, they could be also 0-3 the way they've played. So, and I think Jacksonville is a pretty good team and they have a really good defense. Trevor Lawrence is inconsistent. Brian Thomas Jr. has not been good so far this year, but they can run the ball. That was it. Beisel Tootin is looking like he's a pretty solid running back along with ETN. So I think they'll go to San Francisco. It's always tough East Coast going west, but I think the Niners, run's going to run out here. Tampa over Philly, it was kind of I know they're without Evans, but Philly was fortunate to beat the Rams, and going out on the road, I think it can be a bit of a challenge, and I think that it's a kind of a toss up. And then I just think the Falcons, I still believe that the Falcons are a good team. They had an absolutely god-awful game. Not sure what Jaden Daniels' status is, but home, I'm going to go for the bounce back there.
Okay. All right. Very good. Yeah. And we're both on Buffalo over New Orleans, Lions over the Browns. We both like the Texans to beat the Titans.
Something's got to give there. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
The Texans lose that game, they're done officially. So
100%. New England to beat Carolina. We're both on the Chargers to beat the Giants. I really don't like that matchup for Jackson Dart, but it is what it is. We both like the Rams to handle Indy, Baltimore. We both like Baltimore over Kansas City. So you want to talk about that game real quick before we move on?
Yeah. I mean, I still think the Ravens have struggled a little bit in their two primetime games against tough opponents, but I just think they're a better football team than Kansas City. That pick's actually more for me about just what I've not seen out of Kansas City. And Baltimore, they scored 30 points last night. They were a little bit out of sync. Lamar didn't look very good, and I'll bet on him to have a bounce back game.
Okay.
Right. But it is the Chiefs. It is Arrowhead. It is a must-win game. So it is tough to go against them. But I do think there is a pretty big talent disparity in that game, at least at this point, until the Chiefs get some of their guys back, although they could have Worthy back.
The Chiefs just look like they're just like one of the most boring teams to watch, where they used to be one of the most fun teams to watch. It's just not exciting football, but whatever. They're at a point though right now where they got to just scrape, claw, do whatever they have to do to get a win. But Baltimore also in that same boat, even though I think Baltimore has an easier path the rest of the year than the Chiefs. So probably more of a must win from the Chiefs than the Ravens, but we shall see. All right. So this game, the total is 45. I saw it 44.5. I saw it 45.5. So I just split the difference here at 45 for the total. The Lions, as of this afternoon, were 8.5-point favorites to open up. I think that's a pretty fair line. They're home. They're coming off a nice win. They are on a short week, and the Browns coming off a big win, maybe a little bit of a letdown situation. So give me your Monday morning headline. What does what's this read on Monday morning? Lions at Browns. Or I'm sorry, Browns at Lions. Browns at Lions.
Yeah, I think it's Browns fight valiantly and lose late. I expect this game, as good as the Lions looked against Baltimore, as good as they looked against Chicago, whether it's a letdown or just the fact that the head of the snake for the Lions, as we saw yesterday, is their two running backs. If they get Gibbs and Montgomery cooking and play with that edge and that attitude and that physicality, and then open up the passing game to their, they have so many weapons on the field. Like, you just look at all the weapons that they have on the field at one time, but it all starts with their running game. They're a running team. They're a physical team. Browns have been absolutely phenomenal against the run this year. Completely shut down the Ravens rushing attack last week, as we talked about. So I think the Browns defense keeps them in that game. We slow down the running game. We get pressure on Goff. Maybe he makes some mistakes and we force some turnovers. We need to force more turnovers. That's probably the one thing that this defense hasn't done the best at, although they got a big one when they needed it. So I think, again, whether it's a letdown situation or just, the fact that we are a damn good defense, I think it's going to be one of those games we play very well. And this is a ball game into the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, I just right now don't see enough on the offensive side of the football to actually pick the Browns to win. So I would say this is a Browns cover, an under type game, either like a 24-17 or like a 20-17 type game. Lions win, but I think we have another great showing defensively. Maybe Gabriel gets in, but I actually feel pretty good about this being a competitive football game.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah, the Browns have done, I'm just going off the top of my head, they don't have a whole lot of wins going up to Detroit, but they have been in some competitive games, even when they were pretty, going through some real rough stretches up there. But I think I am not as optimistic as you for this one. I'm thinking more of like a Lions 31, Browns 14 type game. I think, that would be right on that 45 number, but I think the Lions probably cover this 8-point spread if I'm guessing, but I'll see how I feel Sunday morning and maybe readjust that
Do you think they'll be able to run on us? Do you think they'll throw on us?
I just think, like you said, the Lions are so good and so versatile, especially with those two running backs. The Browns have showed on defense that they can stuff the best run game in football, and they can, stifle one of the best passing games in football. But when it's a complementary system, the Lions kind of do both really well. I think teams like that give the Browns a little bit more fits. So it's not a great answer. I just think the Browns. This is a tougher matchup for the Browns than I think even like a Baltimore or definitely than a Green Bay. Just because I think of the weapon, I think of St. Brown, I think of all the weapon, Laporta. I think of the two running backs. I think of
Jameson Williams.
Jameson Williams.
Yeah, we have been susceptible to the deep ball.
Yes. And if it was Martin Emerson on one side and obviously Denzel Ward on the other, locking those two down, and you had Greg Newsome in the slot, and you had, but you're down MJ Emerson, you're down, to your third, fourth, fifth corners on the field sometimes. Denzel Ward's still one of the best in the business, if not the best cover corner, but he can only shut down one guy so we'll see. I do think the Browns will keep it closer in the first half, and I think the Lions just, in my opinion, will probably break away late in this game, sort of kind of maybe how that Baltimore game played out, maybe a little bit closer than that game, actually a lot closer than that game. But I think the Browns, if I'm picking, I'm going Detroit 31, Cleveland 14 in this game. That's just my unprofessional opinion here, but I'm hoping the Browns can finally crack over that 17-point mark, which been lingering for quite a while, but we shall see. So, all right, we'll close our Browns talk there. And before we get into the Ohio State stuff, we did lead off this show talking baseball. And over the past week since our last show, Robert Redford did pass away. I guess this sounds so weird. I didn't realize how old he was. I mean, he was pushing 90.
He was 89,
yeah. And and then I went through his bio. So I'm gonna put up here just some of his biggest, greatest roles. He was a producer. He was a director in some stuff, and obviously an actor was what he's most known for. And this being a sports show, and us leading off talking about baseball, The Naturals probably for most sports fans would be his biggest role. But I haven't seen a ton of his movies, so I can't claim to be go deep in the Robert Redford index for movies and stuff. But I know there's a ton of great ones out there. So your thoughts on, what he did as an actor and maybe some of his roles before we move on.
Yeah, absolutely one of the all-time movie legends. And, you said it, acting, directing, and honestly, one of the biggest things that I didn't even fully realize, but he was really the driving force behind the Sundance Film Festival that takes place every year out in Utah for independent films. So he's been very instrumental in a lot of films that would have never seen the light of day otherwise. Independently made films, not in big studios, but as an actor, you said it, we've talked about The Natural in our movie breakdowns. It's certainly one of the better, if not one of the top 3 baseball movies and a top sports movie. I would put the ending of The Natural up there with the ending of any sports movie, or frankly almost any movie.
Yes,
just an amazing and it's such a great parallel too to what we're seeing with the Guardians right now, because there is a mythical aspect to baseball. And I think The Natural does such a great job of conveying that. It's basically a fairy tale told through baseball. It's basically the Odyssey or King Arthur, told through a baseball player. And it's this guy that comes out of nowhere, older, and can hit the ball 500 feet. And it's there's just that baseball has that mystique. There's magic that happens in that game. And that movie, is such a, reflects that so well, and he's great in it. The Sting for me is just also. Have you seen The Sting?
You know what? I have seen bits and pieces, but I have not seen more than maybe 5 minutes of it.
It's an incredible movie and an incredible performance, and it's really him and Paul Newman, and they're together in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and also they had a lifelong friendship as well that kind of started with those movies. The Sting is an amazing, fun. It's a heist, it's a con man movie, kind of out of the Ocean's 11 mold, but it's an incredible movie. Frankly, he just was charming, handsome, just kind of a man's man, but also he was the classic men want to be like him and women want to be with him kind of movie star.
Yeah.
And then had a great directing career as well. And I believe he won the only Oscar he won was as a director for Ordinary People. So just somebody he'll be missed. His movies will live on forever. There's a lot of his movies that I want to see and will see hopefully here in the near future. I kind of tend to do that. If somebody passes away, then you kind of go through some of their movies. A lot of the streamers are really good about putting those movies out there. Like All the President's Men is another great movie that I've never seen with him and Dustin Hoffman. It's a true story about news reporters around kind of uncovering the Watergate scandal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of parallels to that in the climate that we're in today. Indecent Proposal was a good one if you've seen that one. That's kind of like Demi Moore.
$1 million.
Yeah. So yeah, and by all accounts, a pretty decent guy too. So stood for a lot of good causes, and and he'll be missed. And so we have Gene Hackman and Robert Redford this year, and it's just like you look at that generation of actors, like the Jack Nicholson, Robert De Niro, Robert Duvall, Al Pacino, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, go on. They're all kind of in that, in their 80s and some cases 90s in the case of Clint. And, it really is sort of the probably the greatest generation of actors. But, we're unfortunately probably going to have a lot more of these in the near future. But, I think the beauty of him is that he'll live on forever through his movies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be one of the greatest things about being an actor or actress is, if you put out a great role, a great movie, whatever it might be, like you said, you said it as well as you can. You live on forever. Kind of like in the Sandlot. Like heroes get remembered, legends never die. So
that's it.
Great way to close that one out there. So this is a 2 for Tuesday. We are recording this live Tuesday, September 23rd. So we are going to get into our Ohio State and college football portion of this show right now. So if you tuned in for that, we're getting right into it now. If you're just catching us now and we're looking forward to either Guardian stuff or Cleveland Browns stuff, that was in the first half of the show. This show will be out on podcasts, and obviously you can watch it live on YouTube or any of our platforms that we share it at. So let's get into the Ohio State football talk. They obviously were off this week. And again, like we said, hey, it was a great weekend. Even though the Buckeyes didn't play, you're still the number one team in the country. You're 3-0. You're coming off a big win over Ohio, heading into your Big Ten opener. And hey, the Browns did it for us too. Real quick on Youngstown State. Youngstown State had a big win at Towson, 31-28. YSU is now number 19 in the FCS. They have a bye this weekend. The Penguins are 3-1. Their only loss is to Michigan State, who they did play pretty close. It was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. But next up is home for the Youngstown State Penguins, the number 2 team in the country, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. That game will be at 6 o'clock in Youngstown. So that's definitely a game to get ready for here in Youngstown. So look forward to watching that. All right, let's get into Ohio State and Washington. And again, bye week for the Buckeyes, but Washington, that score is a bit deceiving. First of all, Washington State, in my opinion, stinks. That is a rivalry game. It's the Apple Cup. But that game was Washington outscored Washington State 28-0 in the fourth quarter. So that shows you how close it was there for quite a while. So, I mean, it was a 7-point game heading into the fourth quarter. Their schedule on the season is nothing that's going to send shockwaves through your spine and get you all scared and on teams they have played. Colorado State, very average team this year, 21. UC Davis, an okay FCS team they beat up on, and then again, the quarterback. So Williams, Coleman, Boston. We're going to talk about those three coming up here in a minute. But I'm going to give you just a brief overview on this, Huskies offense. 536 yards per game, which is 10th overall in yards in the FBS, 29th in passing, about 276 yards per game, 9th overall in rushing, 260 yards a game. Again, pretty bad opponents, but, nothing to sneeze at there at those numbers. And scoring offense, number 2 in the country, 55.7 points per game, which I think is why the line started trickling down, because they're getting a lot of respect with some of the scores they've put up this year. Passing, Desmond Williams, he's the quarterback, number 2, 50 of 68, 778 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. He has been sacked 6 times this year, but he also has 220 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. The receiver, this is an NFL player. I don't know what round he'll go in, but he's about a 6'4" receiver. Denzel Boston, 16 catches, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, which is about 16 yards per catch. And then finally, rushing, which is Jonah Coleman, their running back. He is a pretty good running back. He leads the FBS right now in total touchdowns with 10, but he's rushed for 347 yards, 9 on the ground, 8 catches for 150, and 1 through the air. So that's kind of a look at, their main skill position guys. So, Greg, I know, you probably don't have this whole scouting report, all 22 on the Washington Huskies, but what's your initial thoughts of them as Ohio State heads out to Seattle this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough environment. The first road game of any season, especially like the first Big Ten road game, is always going to be challenging, especially when you have a younger team, and it's going to be Julian Sain's first true road game. Now he does have like the Texas game under his belt, which which is great, but it for me and when I think about these games, because we've had, and weirdly, it was under Urban Meyer was where we had a tendency to trip up in these road games.
Yep.
We've been really solid under Ryan Day in that regard, really in every regard, except for when it comes to beating Michigan. It's probably the only thing that he hasn't done well. You want to get off to a good start in these type of games. It's going to be a raucous environment. Ohio State going anywhere is going to be a raucous environment, but Washington is a tough place to play. The crowd's going to be loud. It's not a night game, which is good, but it's still, we're going out west, and the best way to be successful in a game like this is to get off to a good start. The longer we let them hang around, or if we have a turnover early or they get off to the lead, it's just going to become that much more difficult. So, I think clearly they have some solid players. They're 2 years removed from a national championship appearance. So, it's a talented program, and, great players. Obviously second in the scoring offense is, you kind of take that for what it's worth, given what we saw on the schedule, but they can move the football. We're also I think got to be the best defense in the country in terms of points allowed. If not, we're right up there. So, I think it really is about us. I know that probably sounds like a cocky Ohio State fan talking, but I think it's about us showing up and playing our game. We've had 2 weeks to prepare.
Yep.
So we're not coming off a tough game or anything like that. We're rested. We're ready to roll. We'll be prepared. And it's really about us being able to go out there and execute our game plan, not get thrown off or taken out of our game by a crowd, understanding that everything's not going to go perfectly in this game. And we may get hit in the mouth, or we may make a mistake, but how we bounce back from that. But I think it's going to be I would expect a very sort of business-like approach from this team. And I don't know if we're making picks yet, but I love us to cover the 8.5. I think that's, a little bit of a ratty line that may be, skewed by some of these games we've seen Washington play.
Yeah. I think one move that I already saw, I know you saw it today too. Ryan Day is learning from last year, the Oregon trip. They went out on Friday. They're going out on Thursday this year. I think that, or this week, excuse me. I think that right there tells me, like you said, that's a business-like approach. You're going to get out there. You're going to get checked into your hotel. You're going to get accommodated to the time change. And you can't fully embrace that in like the 48 hours, 60 hours, whatever you're out there. But you can make this a workman-like trip. Get out there, enjoy your time, and there's no better way to enjoy a trip like this than to come home on a 4-hour, 5-hour flight back with a W. So, this defense doesn't really scare me, but they're led by it's the former Purdue coach. Is it Walters? He is their DC out there. Their defense, doesn't strike a whole lot of fear into me. And I was watching just a little bit. I watched maybe a quarter and a half of that game on Saturday, and Washington State was had guys running wide open. And I'm just like, I can only imagine Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, any tight end you pick from I think there's going to be some scoring in this game, but like my saving grace with the Buckeyes is knowing no matter what unit out of all, if you throw out special teams too, out of all the units on the field, I trust Ohio State's defense the most out of any unit maybe in the entire country. They've showed what they can do against Texas. Yes, I know Texas hasn't come out looking like world beaters this year, but their defense, and by the way, you said they are tied for first in scoring defense right now at 5.3 points per game. They've given up 16 total points this year, 7 to Texas, 9 to OU, and you had Grambling, but they still put 11 guys out there, so 16 points total. BYU is the other team that has only given up 16 points this year, by the way.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
That's an interesting thing if you're ever looking at a BYU total. Maybe lean the under there, but Ohio State. I have full trust in Matt Patricia, especially after these first 3 weeks. What he has shown. Caleb Downs is basically a coach on the field. I think you can have Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles kind of like, monitoring the quarterback, tracking him, following him, whatever you want to say, mirroring him. And wherever he goes, you're going. And, I think Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, these guys are all guys that enjoy them while they're here, because those 3 guys for sure are NFL guys next year, as long as they want to be. I am very much looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be fun. I do think it will be competitive, probably at least for a while. But like you said, hopefully we can get out to a decent start and kind of, silence the crowd a little bit. I have heard that crowd out there can be maybe not quite Oregon, but not quite Penn State, but maybe right in that Michigan, Wisconsin type level of loudness and great environment. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good game. But I think, like you said, I think Ohio State probably covers that 8.5 point spread that's out there. A few other notes, since we really didn't have a game to cover this week. I just thought I would put a few of these little notes up. But Jeremiah Smith is, he had one. Greg, this is the entire list of receivers at Ohio State that have ever cracked the 1,000-yard mark. That's it. That's the list. Emeka Egbuka is the only guy. Oh, and actually, no. Emeka Egbuka's on there twice. Marv's on there twice. And obviously Jeremiah Smith is going to be on there twice too. But that is the entire list of guys. Smith and Jigba's 1,600 yards. was the best of all time. David Boston, Terry Glenn. I mean, just go through this list. Jeremiah Smith is 4th last year all time in receiving yards in a season. And, he's only getting better. So I thought that was, interesting.
I wonder if anybody in the Woody Hayes era even has 1,000 total yards for their career.
That's a great point. Probably not, but maybe would Paul
Warfield, yeah, that's
maybe
could
he
be, yeah,
in that range, but maybe, but I don't know, but Julian's saying, let me ask you this, like, out of the former Buckeye quarterbacks, and I think there's an obvious answer here, but like, you can tell me, you don't have to exactly compare him to a guy, but like, where maybe do you think he ranks from? Let's go back to maybe like Braxton Miller. So Braxton Miller into, JT Barrett, Cardell, and then you get into Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, McCord, and Will Howard. Where does he, and I'm sorry if I forgot anybody there, where does Julian saying, I mean, it's only 3 games, but where do you see him slotting in that, like, that level of Buckeye?
I see him slotting pretty high up, just from what we've seen so far. I think, to me, Stroud, I think is the top in terms of just pure talent and ability to throw the football. Probably Stroud, Haskins, and Fields are probably like, and I'd put him right kind of in that, in that category of guy. Thinking of it in terms of like, this guy could put up numbers like he put up against OU and like he put up in the first half against Grambling, but I mean, he's going to have a lot of 300-yard games. He's going to have very high completion percentage and some really prolific stats that I think are going to compare more to like your Haskins and your Stroud as it goes on. And if we can get him for at least 2 years, I think he'll be pretty high up there, but ultimately, you're going to ultimately be judged by what you can do, and as far as beating Michigan, getting to the playoff, and winning a national title. Now, obviously, I know the guys that I mentioned didn't win a national title. Will Howard did, so it does create an interesting debate. But I think from just a true talent perspective, he's going to be right up there. I think in the first sentence of great OSU quarterbacks.
Okay, I like it. Let me go to the running backs real quick. So I'm putting up all 3 of the running backs numbers so far this season. So Bo Jackson, 18 rushes, 217 yards, which is 12.1 yards per carry. CJ Donaldson, 33 rushes, 151 yards. James Peoples, 25 for 126. So they're right around that, 5-yard average. So this game, I don't really, let me ask it this way. I don't really care who starts the game. Who has the most carries in this game? Is it Bo Jackson or is it one of the veteran guys?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, Bo's clearly the most dynamic right now. I think I see this game being a game we're gonna get a lot done in the air. So I don't imagine any of the 3 having more than 10 carries, but I think it's kind of a non-answer, but I think they'll all be pretty comparable. But and it's the beauty of having 3, you can go with a hot hand. But I guess for sake of argument, I'll say that Bo Jackson ends up getting the most carries in this game, just because he really is our most dynamic guy. If he can hang on to the football, he brings a little bit of a different dimension than the other guys bring.
For sure. I think he is. He's ready to take that next step too. So, speaking of guys that are going to show out, this would be one of those games where Ohio does not allow you to bet on player props in college football, but if you could, this would be a game I would hammer a lot of Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate props. But like, these 2 guys have already combined 32 receptions in 3 games, over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns total, but 5 through the air with Jeremiah and Carnell Tate.
And did you say that Washington's down their top corner too?
I believe I had heard that. I have not confirmed that, but I had heard that, through one of the, one of the Buckeyes beat reporters had mentioned something along those lines, but they didn't know for sure. They had heard that rumored. So if that is true, these guys, but from what I saw last Saturday, and some Washington State receivers getting open, I think these guys they're gonna eat well on Saturday. So,
and I think there's just you can watch as much film as you want, but there's that kind of oh shit moment of actually getting out on the field with some of these guys and their speed, and I can't imagine what it's like for a corner to watch Jeremiah Smith film all week and then actually have to step out on the field and just experience because there's nobody that you can simulate in practice unless you brought an NFL wide receiver in. There's nothing. There's only so much you could do to ready yourself. And then there's kind of that, oh shit moment, those first couple of routes to be oh my God, this guy is I knew he was good, but
yeah,
he's so much better than I thought in the flesh. So I
think I think the best thing about a guy like Jeremiah Smith too is you saw it in that first Tennessee game, you saw it in the Oregon game. He steps up in the biggest moments, and this is going to be a big moment. His quarterback's going to need him to help him out. Hopefully he steps up for his quarterback. Hopefully his quarterback puts some balls in good spots for him. But this game does not put the scare into me like last year's Oregon game, where it was a 1-2 point spread, Ohio State. But that was a different beast. This Washington team probably should be ranked based on their talent level, their skill, and their 3-0. But again, I think they're going to get a true test this weekend, and we'll see what they do.
Like I said, I always worry that just the worrier in me is just what if we come out, throw a pick six, or what if they hit a bomb, or what if we have a defensive back fall down early? Those are the things. When that happens, it's okay, shit, now we're in a dogfight. But if we come out, whether it's on defense and we get a stop and score, or we come right out on offense and score, you just feel the energy kind of get sucked out of the crowd. There's going to be a decent amount of Buckeye fans there, enough that it'll make a difference if we get up. But the quicker you can take you can kind of take their soul and take their crowd out of the game. It just becomes any other football game.
Yep.
Then you're fine. So it's just I know I'm belaboring the point, but that's really to me what it comes down to.
No.
Because any of these games over the years, you look at the Purdue game where we got blown out. There was an Iowa game we lost on the road. I think in that game specifically, we had an early pick six, and it's just there's always something that happens, or just Rondale Moore turning into Tyreek Hill for a game.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's always going to be something that you can point to be we got off to a bad start, or we had this freakish play. If you can avoid that, talent wins.
For sure. And I think our talent is going to be full on display this weekend.
Would you say now, I guess, as we look at our road schedule and you look at what happened to Illinois last week, and Michigan aside, Michigan is always going to be aside, is this our toughest road game before Michigan?
Let me bring that up real quick. So I would say for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Illinois game, they're going to muddy that up, and they're going to have some pride coming off of, I don't know what the hell we watched last weekend with them. That was a total embarrassment by Brett Bielema and the Illini. Michigan obviously presents its own challenges later in the season, but I would say, and in Washington, they're on a 21 game win streak at home or something like that. So it's like the second longest in the country. So, but again, the Buckeyes have not played out there during that win streak. So hopefully we can put that to bed this weekend. And as our buddy Edgar would say, that ought to shut these people up. But we're going to come back and pick the score at the end. Got about 10 more minutes here. But I want to throw out a did you know. We didn't have a did you know for Ohio State this week, but I put together a did you know question. It does deal with a Big Ten quarterback, but do you know who the all-time leader in FBS wins is?
For quarterbacks?
For a quarterback. He currently plays in the Big Ten.
Oh, he currently plays in the Big Ten.
Yes. This surprise. I didn't even know who this guy was.
I was going to say like Bo Nix or something.
Well, it is Mark Gronowski, and as I mentioned, Youngstown State plays South Dakota State at home, and he was a quarterback for the Jackrabbits in 2020. Did not play in 2021, but then 2022 to 2024, where he racked up 49 wins, and he has 3 wins with Iowa, so 52. I think he took over. I think it was Kellen Moore before that.
Oh yeah,
I think he had like 51 or 50. So I just thought that was really interesting. And that guy looks like he is from South Dakota or Iowa. He looks like he's straight off one of their farms there.
So you could pretty much pencil in he's going to end up with 57 career wins because he's going to get his 8 with Iowa and just get his 8-4 or whatever, and just plod along with their legendary coach out there.
They did have that was kind of a fun game against Rutgers. They did play the other night, last Friday.
Yeah, a rare high scoring game there. You would expect
at least comparable to any other Rutgers team. All right, let's take a look at just real quick a couple news and notes from last week. So, I just put a few games on this schedule, but tell me what stood out to you last weekend. And it was a wild week of college football.
Yeah, it was like we talked about it in Indiana just absolutely destroying Illinois, and just yet another example of I'm sure the public was pretty heavy on Illinois in that game. We all looked at that line and scratched our head. I think it ultimately got up to 6.5 for Indiana. Like, why is that line where it is? And lo and behold, it's a complete blowout. So, unfortunately for Oklahoma, Mateer, I saw it had broke his hand and is out a month. And I think that Texas game is falling in that time period where he's out. That I don't know what they have in the way of a backup quarterback, but they really looked like a playoff team, and that's a huge blow. And he also looked like a Heisman candidate.
He did.
You had mentioned, you were high on Tulane. I was high on Utah, and both of them looked pretty terrible. It's Texas Tech for real. Is Texas Tech a playoff potential team?
They look like the class of the Big 12 right now. They really do. It's still too early, and that Big 12, I could see like a 2-loss team still winning that conference. But yeah, they look to be the class of the Big 12 for sure.
And then Ole Miss will have their test to see how real they are this week with LSU coming to town. So
yeah, like from giving a bet perspective last week, and in fairness to us, we are doing these shows Monday or Tuesday night, so like there is some line movement and some stuff that could change, but those were our best bets last week were a little off the mark. But let's go now to our Big Ten tiers. So here's my tiers again. top 3 doesn't change. My tier 2, though, I put Indiana at the top of tier 2 as like potential playoff team. USC's in there, Indiana, and I'm sorry, I already said Indiana, and Michigan and Washington. I think Washington, depending on how they perform this weekend, could still stay in that. Illinois, total fraud. I had them previously at the top of tier 2, but I'm dropping them into their own class, just maybe a bunch of disappointments. And they lost, I think, their best defensive back in that game for the season. So that's also going to hurt them. Nebraska, I still think is a frisky team. Maryland just went into Wisconsin and beat them up, which dropped Wisconsin down to tier 6, the dumpster fire, in my opinion. So what do you think about? I noticed a little typo in there, but anything that stands out from the Big Ten, this past week?
I think you got it. We had talked last week about that. All these kind of like tier 2 to tier 3 teams are all going to be tested here in the next few weeks, and obviously Illinois failed their test. Indiana passed their test. Washington has their test this week. USC's will be coming up. Michigan passed a small test at Nebraska. Looked good. Underwood looked good. I mean, they're certainly, they're going to continue to get better. And by the time the Thanksgiving weekend rolls around, they're going to be a very competitive. I would expect them to be a top 20 team. I did quickly pull up Indiana's schedule. They go to Oregon they play at Iowa this week. That's no gimme.
They have Penn State,
as much as I joke about them. And then they have a bye week, and then they go at Oregon, and then they play at Penn State later in the year. So if they can find a way to win one of those games, I think they will almost assuredly be a playoff team. But that's a tall order. But even if, as we've seen before, even if they lose both of those games, with a lot of things that could happen, they could still be potentially a playoff team especially if they're competitive in those games.
Yeah. So, how the results fare, you can't get blown out in both of those games. You gotta stay in that if you want to, talk. But like you said, maybe Indiana is this year's Indiana.
Yeah,
Indiana is this year's Indiana. You never know. And Kurt Signetti had one of the best quotes. I think he said like how was this challenge present this week? He's like, well, it'll certainly be tougher than last week.
Dude,
it's refreshing actually.
Yeah,
I kind of like it.
You don't want to be on the receiving end of that, but he's got moxie, and he's got the Big Ten, kind of the boring old Midwest, and it's like he's got that chip on his shoulder. He's kind of like that, that little dog that goes after the big dog. And I don't say that condescendingly. I mean, it's Indiana football. Right. So you have to have that chip on your shoulder at a school like that to get attention. But he was like that from day one. And I'll tell you what, he has talked the talk, but he has walked the walk with that program, and he has made that program into a formidable national team. I don't want to say a national power, but a formidable team on the national landscape. And let's be honest, he's going to make himself a shit ton of money somewhere. Probably not Indiana, but will he be in the SEC next year or at some high profile opening? Is he going to be one of the first calls of any school that has an opening? I'm sure. Probably Oklahoma State probably already gave him a call. He's got to be on the top of everybody's list. So good for him. Yeah,
absolutely. And he has brought in another quarterback, Mendoza, that looks like an NFL guy right now.
Yep.
All right, let's take a look at this week. We got some monster. Absolutely.
What a week. What a sports weekend. So, which we'll talk about.
Oh yeah. We didn't. Yeah, I don't even have that prepared, but yeah, we'll get into anything else. But let's try to shoot for about 10 more minutes here, and we'll get through some of these. But I just put some of my favorite games of the week. USC at Illinois at noon, Notre Dame at Arkansas at noon, Ohio State travels to Washington 3:30, LSU at Ole Miss 3:30, Auburn at Texas A&M 3:30, Indiana at Iowa 3:30, Oregon at Penn State 7:30, Alabama at Georgia 7:30. That's a great slate.
It's great when you have good games in every time slot, and there's not like 6 good games at 7:30 and a bunch of shit the rest of the day. This is like there are at least 2. I mean, you hit all these are good games. There are at least 2 really compelling games, like really compelling games in each of the 3 main time slots, which doesn't get any better than that. And you have a Penn State whiteout against Oregon. You know, I love a Penn State whiteout, especially when we're not playing in it.
Yes.
Although it is kind of cool when we're playing in it, but it's even more enjoyable when we're not. So that'll be a really fun one to watch. That will probably be the one game. If you said, hey, you can only watch one, that would probably be the one. But what a slate.
I am going to tell you too, I really like Oregon and Alabama going on the road this week.
Ooh, okay.
At least covering.
Okay.
I think Oregon's 3.5, Alabama's 4.5 from what I saw. Those are kind of like early leans. I haven't bet anything, but those are my early leans this week. I think Alabama got absolutely hammered, rightfully so, week 1, but they have bounced back and showed they are not going to give up on this season. I don't think Georgia's as good as they've been in the past, but that's going to be a fun game. But yeah, I kind of like Oregon maybe squeaking out a win, and Penn State does not have they're like 12-7 or something in like true whiteout games. So they're good, but they're not like unbeatable in those games. So, but there's some games I didn't even hit that are on this. But those are some of my like favorites from this week. So, what's your like? You said Penn State, Oregon would be your number 1 choice.
Yep.
What do you think about that Alabama Georgia game?
Yeah, like that's an interesting one because my initial read was Georgia on that one. I can get behind you with Oregon. I do think Penn State will win the game. I think it could be a close game. My initial thought was Georgia to win that game, but boy, what a shot in the arm that'd be for Kalen DeBoer if they can go to Georgia and win that game. I just think it's a little bit of a revenge game after last year. And then at home at night, Georgia wins that game. I believe they're coming off a bye. The one that I like on the initial thought, we were pretty quick to anoint LSU after that Clemson game.
Yes.
But the reality is they have not looked good, really. They didn't even look that great. And they looked dominant in that Clemson game, but they still, struggled to put Clemson away.
Yep.
And then they have not looked good since. And I know it's really dangerous to pick. Ole Miss feels like they're always in this spot every year where it's like, oh, they might be for real this year. Is this, Lane Kiffin, here we go. But I'm going to kind of throw caution to the wind, and I like Ole Miss to win that game. I think they actually are even favored, right? They're a slight favorite in that game.
Okay.
I think, again, it's less about Ole Miss for me and more that I just don't believe in LSU. And I think they were sort of, again, kind of put on this like, oh, they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. Because, look, they went to Clemson and won.
Sure.
Well, clearly, that doesn't mean as much as it did. I don't trust Brian Kelly in big games. And I think Lane will pull out the stops. And I think they'll get the win in Oxford.
I will watch that game. I'll obviously have Ohio State game on the main setup, but I don't trust either of those teams.
Yeah.
So that will be a stay away from me in that game. But yeah, I could definitely see Ole Miss winning that one as well. This is just another great week of college football. To me, if I could pick one sport to watch at all, and like the other ones have to go away. Obviously, we talked about the Guardians. I love them. NFL's great. It'd be college football 100%, 99 times out of 100 if I'm making that choice. To me, it's the best sport.
And real quick on that, like Notre Dame at Arkansas,
high scoring.
Probably the last. Well, I don't know. Notre Dame struggled, but probably realistically the last game that if Notre Dame can get past that game, they could get to their 10-2, like we talked about. But that's going to be a really going to an SEC school. They got a really good quarterback, really good offense. It's an 11 a.m. local time game. That is a danger zone for a Notre Dame team that is not playing good defense.
Arkansas is coming off a loss, a 1-point loss to Memphis, too. So they're going to be pissed off. So, Notre Dame better come out ready to play. And like you said, though, if they win that, they run the table possibly and get to 10-2, get in the playoff. But yeah, it should be another great week. I had a whole other segment planned, but I'm going to save that for next week. I do have my best lists of best names in college football, both offense and defense. I'm going to shelve that for next week. But so we can like make our picks here. Now, I posted this, or when I made this graphic, it was 9.5, but we're going to drop that down to 8.5 because that is the current betting line. And there you can see it. Washington has 22 straight home wins dating back to the 2021 season. So Ohio State, 8.5 point favorites, laying 8.5 in Seattle. 51.5 is the updated total. I think that has held strong there. So I think you and I are both on the Buckeyes to cover that. What do you think about the total in that game?
Yeah, I'm going to go 38-17 Ohio State.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think, I think it's a competitive football game in the first half. I think, but I think, I think, and I hope that it's never really competitive to the point where the outcome's really in doubt. I'd like to see us hopefully get off to a good start and continue. But I think Washington will, pose a little bit of a challenge for our defense. They'll get some points, but 38-17.
Okay.
Start off the Big Ten season with a W.
I like it. I will up your score total, and I'm going to go 45-20 Ohio State in that one. So very similar outcome in that game. But 45-20. I really don't know how Washington's going to score 20 points on our defense.
True.
But they are very talented, very, very talented team. So, so we both it sounds like we both, what was your score one more time?
38-17.
Okay. So we're both on the over and the Buckeyes covering in that game, which is more fun anyway, at least for a prediction show.
Yeah, that 51.5 seems really low unless, I don't know, because it feels like I can't see, it's hard to see a scenario where we score less than 30, and that's even less than 35. So I don't know. We could very easily, like you said, they gave up a ton to Washington State last week. We could almost hit that over ourselves.
Right. So, and especially if the only way I could see that under is if our defense absolutely completely shuts them out or holds them to 10 points and we go even 42-10. I don't want to get crazy
because it's just weird because it's implying the line's implying a 30-21 type game, which I don't know, but hey, we'll see. We've questioned Vegas lines before and come out the wrong way on that. I would be surprised if that line was under 10 at kickoff.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you do want to bet Ohio State, get on it sooner than later. Jimmy and Joey down here in Youngstown, their $15, $20 bets aren't going to push it that high. But but Vinny and Bobby out in Vegas, their $50,000, $100,000 bets might start moving that line a little bit. All right. The last thing I want to get you out of here on, this was going around Twitter last week, and I just thought this was an interesting question. So I'm gonna put this graphic up. You are allowed to pick one region, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or H. You can only watch teams that are playing in that region
Playing in that region.
Playing in that, well, or from that region, I should say.
Okay.
So from that region or playing in that region, you're the rest of your life. What region are you picking? And let's take C out of it.
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah.
Because we're Ohio State fans, so that's what we would choose. So if you could pick another region outside of the letter C, what would you pick and why?
Oh my gosh. So this is all sports.
All sport. Yeah. You know what? I think like whoever was tweeting it out was like changing it from sport to sport or whatever, but let's make it all sports. All sports. And we're implying we would pick C, obviously, but
yeah,
I think C is the obvious answer if it's all sports, because then you got all the East Coast baseball and football teams there, and the Midwest. But
yeah, this is really tough. I guess my initial thought. Oh God, this is hard. Because I love college football so much, that I would probably go with D, because it would get you kind of all the sort of the SEC, and then it would get you for college basketball, it'd get you like the UNC Dukes and some of those. But that's like, but then you're basically like baseball is basically gone, because it'd be the Braves.
You get maybe the Marlins.
NFL is like, I guess if I kind of like, I'm a little bit of a Dolphins fan, so I assume it looks like Miami's in D. So yeah, that's really hard. I'm gonna guess I'll go with D for that reason, for really the college sports aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I would not be very happy, because I love me some baseball.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let me pose an easier question then. Eliminate one region. Which region would you completely eliminate?
Probably A.
Okay.
Or G.
G would be the answer. Yeah, for sure. G. Yeah, like, I mean, I miss some.
No Phoenix Suns basketball.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah.
But no, I saw that out there. I thought it was a good thought experiment. So, all right.
Although E, there's like almost no professional sports teams in E as well.
That's a good point.
Except for like New Orleans, but still,
Yeah, it's
interesting. That is an interesting.
Yeah, whoever came up with that was very good. I thought I'd borrow that for today. But all right, well, we covered a shit ton of stuff today, and I told Greg, let's go about an hour 15.
Which you gotta put the 30-minute premium on that, especially we're riding high forwards. So
I mean, what did we talk? We talked Guardians. We talked
hit everything.
Redford, Browns,
we hit everything.
NFL, college football, random shit.
And we didn't even touch on the Ryder Cup. So
oh my god,
and I know we're up against it, but like it is like this is. But we've talked about just about everything, but this weekend will not stop from a sports standpoint. Really, from Ryder Cup's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, pretty much goes on all
That's
day.
In New York,
all
too,
those
right?
days. That's at Bethpage in Long Island. It's going to be really raucous, crazy crowds. I expect it to be pretty heated and intense. Europe's probably the better team. I actually kind of like them to win, but I think that the advantage will be real, because it's going to be a pretty hostile crowd. So I think it'll be awesome. And it's one of the best sporting events to watch. But you have that's just kind of like, that's always going to be on, like really from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m., all 3 days really. So it's like, you could always flip over and catch the Ryder Cup. And then we have all those college football games on Saturday. You have a Dublin NFL game, Steelers Vikings at 9 a.m. So you got NFL from 9 a.m. through the day. I think the big 4:30 game is KC Baltimore. You have sort of a appealing, they're selling it, the Micah Parsons return to Dallas. It's Packers Cowboys. So, for anybody who's an NFL fan, even though the Cowboys aren't the best team, it's still a really great matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the baseball pennant races going on that weekend. So Like it doesn't get any better than a weekend like this. Anytime you can check off, and I consider college football and the NFL are two different sports. So I call that two different sports. You got golf, you got baseball, you got 4 sports, like high level, going on. And it's a group, like probably the best week of college football we've had all year in terms of matchups. And the NFL is always compelling. So like, this is a great, if you want to get that vasectomy or like, whatever,
Hopefully it's already scheduled.
Fake a stomach flu, or just like, sprain your ankle so you can sit on your ass all weekend. This is the perfect weekend to do it.
Bob got another vasectomy. He's out all week. But no, that's phenomenal. It's literally, a lot of people say, March leading into the Masters is the best sporting. I personally think October is the best sports time on the calendar, but we can argue with a wall on that one. That's, you'd be blue in the face. You can, just depending on what you like better, but either way, you can't go wrong. Great setup for that, and it's going to be an amazing weekend of sports. So let's get a Buckeye victory. Let's hope the Browns can pull one out again, but like you think it's going to be close, which is great. I am on Team USA here for the at least my 25 American dollars is on the USA, but that's gonna be a lot of fun. Like even for the non-golf fan, that is a great event because it's truly like the Happy Gilmore, like you get the rowdy crowds and stuff like that, which is phenomenal. And you got Europe, competing against the United States. It's just an awesome event. So, all right, we'll leave it there, and we'll bring it back next week for another round of some fun stuff. But Greg, thanks for doing this. Go Guardians. Hopefully we can, get another one or two. Split these next 2 games at the very least with the put the Tigers out of their misery and go from there. But
hopefully we're talking playoff baseball next week on top of everything else.
Absolutely. So great week of sports, and make sure to follow. Again, we put content out as much as possible on our pages, but a lot of good stuff here. So for Greg, I'm Justin. Thanks for watching the 330 Sports Show on Youngstown Studio. We will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you.